Okay, good morning and welcome to Growing Together for Parents and Guardians. I'm Valerie Fortin, a mother of a wonderful 14 years old. Growing Together is a place where we will connect with our parental instinct and our intuition. A place where we will connect also to our know-how, our values. We will try to understand our children from the inside out and create a context of attachment. Today, it's an introductory. We will look at how their brains develop, and this may explain why children sometimes have a hard time behaving as we would like them to. Then we will share some key ideas that will help you to become parent you would like to be. I'm really grateful and honored to have Madame Eva de Gostini and Cheryl Tenasco, who will introduce themselves and guide us into understanding our children. The floor is yours, ladies.
So I'm Eva DeGostini. I'm also a parent. I have a daughter and a son who are now young adults. And some of the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today through my knowledge as a professional, so as a psychologist and as a person who's really always been trying to understand how children develop and also why they get into trouble sometime and what we as adults can really do to help them. And I wish I had known this when my children were little, but I just need to let you know that the things that we're going to be talking about throughout this series will make a difference to your relationship with your children at any point in their life. As soon as I started understanding better what really made for a good connection with my children and understanding why even when they were young adults, they sometimes acted in a way I wasn't too thrilled about. But when I understood what they needed from me as the parent, it made all the difference, and it made all the difference. So I'm sharing with you my professional knowledge, but also my personal experience. And raising children is one of the most, it is the most important task in our society, and we need to all come together to really support you as parents and to help you to be the best parents you can for your children so they can grow and develop. Cheryl.
My name is Cheryl Tenasco White Duck. I'm a member of the Kitigan Zibi community. I'm a Anishinaabe. I have two wonderful girls. They're young adults, just like Eva. So been through the parenting. Loved it. I loved it from day one. And my background is, I've been pretty much for 30 years in childcare. I ran the Kitigan ZB was Usin for 17 years. Before that, I worked in Ontario at a private profit center, and then worked at Indian Affairs for a few years. And in that time, I have certified in many areas, special needs at this point. I have an early childhood diploma, and I'm here today to support parents because I truly believe that this education, lifelong learning, it starts at home. And for me, the bonding and attachment that has to occur between the parents and their child is crucial to their future because of their brain development. And we'll hear about that. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I hope we have a good experience.
Thank you so much. You were talking about, well, of course, raising children since we are mothers, and you kind of accompany parents into your work. So these days we kind of hear a lot of people, even me as a mother, when I was pregnant of my child, I would hear people telling me, you should do this and you should do that. And then if you don't do this, then that will happen. And I kind of got all confused. But as you said, Eva, one day I kind of hear Dr. Neufeld, and it kind of connected to who I was, to my instinct parent, and my intuition. And I really found that was part of the answer. And so it can get really confusing. And I hope you will drive us through understanding our children. But with all your knowledge and your experience, can you tell us, Eva, what have you come to understand about raising children?
Okay, so let me just share my screen here so we have a few little visuals to look at. Well, and I think I just want to go to the title, Raising Our Children, a Joy and a Challenge. So just to remember, every one of us, it doesn't matter how knowledgeable we are, the day-to-day work of raising our children is wonderful. And also it can be very, very challenging. So yes, I've had to think a lot about what it is, like what can we do? And Valerie, you mentioned Dr. Gordon Neufeld. He's the developmental psychologist from Vancouver, British Columbia, and he has pulled together the knowledge that actually he often says we shouldn't have to talk about, but we kind of lost our way, and he brings us back. At least he brought me back to a basic understanding. And when I really thought of it, and again with my own children, with the children that I work with in the schools, it was really clear that there are some keys, and one of them is respecting their natural immaturity. Um, we know they're children, we call them children, and yet there are times when we wish they would act like little adults. And that's just not possible. And as we go through today, we're going to really look at some of the things that are part of children's immaturity, part of who they are, just who they really are, and in this moment in time. And you know, we have these beautiful, beautiful pictures that parents have given us permission to share. You know, we have this little girl who's just engrossed in what she's doing, um, and and there's a reason for what she's doing in that moment in terms of her overall development. And we need to respect that and remember they are growing and developing, and we have to really, really look at that, and then also honor the pace of childhood. Remember that children don't have all the experiences that we have, that this little girl needs all the time to really look at whatever she's looking at. Sometimes we're in a rush to get, let's go on to the next thing. But one of the biggest messages that I've learned from looking at children through this developmental lens is, let's just take our time. Let's just take our time. It will come.
Thank you, Eva. Cheryl, I had the opportunity to learn a lot from you, and you kind of share your own cultural way of doing things and how it was. And I can really connect that that you kind of knew all that, you know, that this is the way you were treating your children. And could you please tell us a little bit in your cultural way of knowing, how do you see your role in raising children?
Well, as a parent, you know, like it's so important that they make those connections with their grandparents, you know, and those people in your family who are helping you raise your children, because a child is born onto, not just onto you, but into a family. And in our culture, you know, this is a shared responsibility, you know, where sometimes, you know, let's say I fell sick, you know, I had somebody, and sometimes it wasn't always a family member. It was an extended family member. And I think it's so important to make sure that, you know, you have, you know, friendships with people with children the same age, because these people will, you know, will understand what you're going through and the phase that children are at, and you can share those issues. And raising children within a community, you know, they always said it takes a community to raise a child, and I really honestly believe that. We have our roles to play, and we need to support each other. And regarding language and culture, like, you know, to the best of my ability, like introducing the language was one of the things that's priority, because like when I speak about the brain, you know, the brain is open, this wide. And this is like the first 5 years of life. So when it's open, then all the positive experiences should be happening now.
Yeah.
Some negative experiences get in there, and this is what, our grandparents teach us. Let's say, for example, for me, I wasn't allowed to, let's say, even before I had children, but being pregnant, I couldn't go to um, a funeral, like a wake, because they say that the child is close to the creator right now,
Mm.
and they could easily end up leaving. So the elders used to say, stay away from there. And back in
Interesting.
my day, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
What I'm hearing, Cheryl, is that they're saying that the beauty of having a variety of people in our village is that their wisdom, there was a wisdom, right, to what they said, and they were guiding you to protect your child the best that you could. And that wisdom is really important, isn't it?
And yes, it is. And even just looking at your picture, Eva, the child, like I was brought out to pick medicine, this
Yeah.
calls out to me because at this age, you had illnesses. And my mother used to take me out to get my own medicine to cure whatever, ailed me. So
Yeah.
that was, these are really important natural occurrences that
Exactly.
have to keep up.
Well,
Yeah, and I think it brings us to our next point, and one that you've raised very eloquently, Cheryl, is that it's really this attachment relationship, right? It's children grow and develop when adults create a relationship garden. Yeah, and it's that garden. And why do we talk about a garden? Well, I love the idea of a garden, or even just looking at how nature works. But definitely when you are part of the process of planting a garden, you realize you can't make that seed grow, but you can create the conditions so that it can grow into whatever it is going to grow into. And I think, again, respecting that we can't make children into things, but we can make that relationship garden, that environment that will allow for the natural growth and development to happen. So I think that's really what we want to work on, as Cheryl said, in that relationship garden. Then the child can grow, and as human beings, the part of us that grows and develops all the way through is the brain. It's that part that of course our body grows as well, and our capacities grow. So we are creating that environment that will allow the children to grow and develop. So it's really, we're going to talk a lot in some of the sessions about our role as the gardener, as the person caring for children, and also honoring who the child is and how they're developing, and allowing us to appreciate the stage that they're at. They might not be where we want them to be, but they're getting there. And so we have to think about, well, what is it that makes for a warm attachment relationship? And the first one is a warm invitation. And I remember hearing a talk by, actually a couple of people have said this, but one person particularly said, when your child enters the room, or when you first see your child in the morning, or when you first see them at the end of the day, when you go to pick them up at the daycare, do your eyes light up? Because every child wants to believe that the adults who are caring for them want to care for them, delight in caring for them, enjoy being there for them, even if it's just for a small moment. And when I heard that, I realized, oh my goodness, I have a lot of love in my heart for my children. I really do. We all do. But do I show it to them in my eyes? And this is a little practice I think that all of us need to sort of have with every person in our life, but especially with our children, is before we try to get them to do something or just rush on our day, we just say, good morning. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. Just something where your eyes light up and you show them the delight. And then you get into, okay, let's get going. We've got to get out of the house. But showing them that delight. And we call that giving a warm invitation. And it's amazing. The more you give that to children, they kind of like it's the sunshine. It's the sunshine. And then that will allow them to grow. And they will often, when you start doing that as part of your practice, as part of just remembering what they need from us, they need our sunshine, it can start to make a big difference. The other piece, of course, is that we're all going to make mistakes. Every single one of us makes mistakes. And one of the interesting things is that when we make a mistake, it's really up to us to try and fix it up with our child. Some people say, well, shouldn't the child apologize? Well, it's hard for them to apologize. They're immature. It's hard for us to apologize, and we're mature. But always remember, we are the child's sunshine. We are the tree that they lean against. And so we have to go back and say, it didn't work out today. I yelled at you. It wasn't good. Let's start again. And my daughter happened to be a tantrumer. She did lots of tantrums. And of course, as a psychologist, I knew what I had to do. But as a mother and as a person, sometimes I didn't respond very well. But after the big thunderstorm was over, and I would go to her room and I would say, oh, this didn't work. Let's try again. And interestingly enough, when I asked my daughter when she was an adult, I said, do you remember all those times I yelled at you? I felt so badly. And she says, oh, no, Mom, because you know what? We always figured out, I knew that you were going to come back to me. Oh, that made a big difference. So we have to remember our children need to know it's okay. We are okay. And they also need a soft heart. They need a soft heart. They need to be able to receive our love. And we also need to have a soft heart, because when we get into one of those tussles with our children, I remember thinking, well, I don't know when I'm going to talk to her again. And then I had to remember she's my child. And then my heart gets soft, and then I'm able to go to her. And when she's sitting in her room like this, then I have to wait. And we're going to talk in a moment about why she's sitting in her room looking like that. But we need to come back to that soft heart. And Val, I don't know that you were going to share a story perhaps with of things that you did for your son to give him a warm invitation.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like sometimes we would have fights, but knowing that, how important it was to give a warm invitation, like sometimes it was like he had a big tantrum, or we went for a fight and he was in his room, and like he kind of said bad things to me, but if I would have listened to what people were saying, he would probably still be in his room. But I was like, but my heart was like, what's happening right now? So I would cooking some pancakes, and he would come and he would know that our fight was over, and that was his arm, like we could share that together and then just be at rest, and he knew I was still gonna be his mother, so
yeah, it's very important. We have to remember our job. And I love this photograph here, because this is a parent who is clearly creating that relationship with their child. And this child needs a mature guide, right? This child, no matter, it needs somebody who has experience, who has maturity, who knows what life is like, to be able to guide them. But unless they lean into us, and that's why I love this photograph, because the child is leaning into the parent, and the parent is very gently guiding that child. But unless the child feels safe enough to lean in, that we can't do that guiding. But we also need to remember that as human beings, we are very vulnerable. Our feelings get hurt really easily. We get worried. This little girl here, she's looking towards the adults and saying, "Whoa, is it going to be okay? What's going on here? Are you going to take care of me?" And again, as I said, I raised my voice to my children. It would more have been my son who looked at me like that, because he was very, very sensitive. And we need to remember that when we are sensitive, when we feel vulnerable, we and when we don't feel safe, then we're going to protect ourselves. Now, some children do it very quickly. Some just shut down, and you can just tell they're not connecting with us at all. Other children will do that by fighting back and pushing away. But the thing we need to remember is that this little girl needs the adults in her life. So even if she is, wanting to push them away, maybe saying something to that person, you're mean to me, I hate you, you're stupid, which children say to their parents all the time. And again, we're going to talk as we go through our sessions about how to work with children to help them to let us know what they need in ways that are not inappropriate. But the bottom line is that we need to remember the more the child yells at us, I hate you, go away, I don't want you, the more they actually need us. But it's too scary for them right now to say, I need you. And so that's really important. And of course, we as adults do that as well. We as adults do that. Our feelings get hurt, and then we don't want to talk to people. Leave me alone. And I don't know if any of you have ever said that perhaps to your spouse. Leave me alone. And then they walk into the other room, and it's like, no, not that much alone, right? But we got to work together. We got to do this dance together with our children. But also remember, they're young and they're vulnerable. And so we've got to work with that vulnerability. And again, we will be talking about how to do this in the next few sessions. And now we talk the big thing about emotions. Oh my goodness. Because when things are not going well, there's all sorts of emotions.
Yeah, Eva, talking about emotion again, sometimes we hear like, is there good or bad emotion? So I was gonna ask to you too, are there some emotion that are good or not? And also I often hear people say that, like if you think positive and if you have a positive mindset, then things will get better. So could you maybe go on a little bit with my question?
Yes. Because there has been, and in the history of psychology, in the history of child development, we didn't know what was going on inside of the brain. And so when we saw messy emotions, this little girl who's crying and probably had a bit of a tantrum, and we go, oh, come on now, we don't want that. We don't want that. When we ourselves perhaps feel sad or depressed or frustrated, we want to get out of that emotion. But we have to remember that emotions are a natural and necessary response to our world. Again, I'll use my son and my daughter because it's they are the people who teach us the most about the kind of parents we should be. And that's why, of course, when you become a grandparent, you get to do a do-over. but my daughter let me know through her tantrums that something wasn't working in her world. My son had emotions, but he kept them all in. So I didn't know what was going wrong with him. So there are no good or bad emotions, because emotions are our brain's way of moving us to communicate what's not going well in our life, or when things are going well, of course, because of we also want to have, there are emotions that are pleasurable and wonderful, but painful emotions are not bad emotions. Right? They can be very messy. When my daughter was having her tantrum, it was very messy. It was very noisy. When I responded back to her, it was messy. It was noisy. But at least I knew that something was going on and something needed to be fixed. Right? And with that came growth. I know with my daughter, I mean, she and I worked really, really hard at trying to understand why those tantrums were there, what was happening with them, what she was trying to tell us, how she could tell me in a better way, but not for her not to tell me when things weren't going well. I didn't want a child who was always good and always quiet, which my son had a tendency to be. But later on, he told me that there was all this stuff going on inside of him and it wasn't coming out. So these emotions need to come out. And we now know, again, through the neuroscience, and we'll look at the brain in a moment, that when we try and shut off our emotions and constantly, even constantly think positively, we actually end up in bigger trouble, So there's no such thing as good emotions or bad emotions. We need them all.
Yeah, I guess, like even if we have a big cry, we feel so good right after, but it can be, like hard for someone seeing your child crying all the time, but so necessary. Both of you, Eva and Cheryl, talked a little bit about the brain in the previous slide. And Cheryl, I would like you to tell us, why is it so important to understand the brain when raising children?
Well, I think, this begins, while the child is in utero. So, it's important that the first thing, this is why we get followed up by an obstetrician while the child is in utero. And as the brain is the main computer, of our bodies. And, with all the education that I've had in the early childhood field, this is very, very open, like I said, and, the brain is open that much, 0 to 5. So it starts closing after that. And it doesn't close totally, but there's just a little space there where information can get in, whereas, 0 to 5, a whole lot. And I think it's really important for parents to understand that, because all the experiences that the child is receiving, good or bad, is getting all imprinted in there. And Eva, you would probably explain better, for more, the technical terms.
Yeah. Yes,
But your
but that's
understanding is much more
yes,
deeper.
but yes, but it, again, so important to understand that this brain, that is the gift, our gift, it's what allows us to be alive and truly human, and very, very malleable in those early times, even in utero. You're absolutely right, Cheryl. That we need to honor and respect what it needs, and it takes many, many years to fully develop. We used to think, oh, it would be maybe around 17 or 18, but now they know it's like 25 or 30 before it stabilizes. And thank goodness it also continues growing all the way through. And that is why, as older people, we can have some wisdom, because our brain continues to develop. But it counts on, again, the gardeners, who are the parents and the adults in the child's life, to create that good environment. But we do need to remember it takes a long time. And it is the center of our emotions. And though that part of our brain that has our emotions in it is a very early developing part of the brain, and it is essential. It is absolutely essential to making sure we stay alive. So again, it's not always it was kind of a messy part of the brain, but we have to recognize that it too is important. And if that part of the brain functions as it should and is given permission to function as it should, then the other parts of the brain also continue to grow and develop. But if the emotional part of the brain is too preoccupied with trying to stay alive, then the rest of the brain doesn't develop as well. And that's exactly what you were saying, Cheryl. In those early years, we have to make that young brain feel safe with us, so knowledge can come in, so growth can happen. And so, as I say, that part of the brain, it moves us to ensure our safety and our survival. And then once that safety and survival is there, then the other parts of the brain, the rational part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain, the problem solving part of the brain, all of those parts of the brain now are given permission to grow and develop. So we have to take care to make sure that our children feel safe so the brain can do its job. And we call this neuroscience, right? The science of the brain. And we've learned so much. In fact, it's hard now to stay on top of everything, but the basics are there. There are reasons for things, and they grow and develop, and we have to honor all of them. And yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Eva. I was just gonna ask, when you're a parent and you're aware of child's brain development, then you know that if you're expecting, for them to share, because you have 2 or 4 children, and you're expecting them to share, well, that sharing, it's maybe really hard. So then, you will you will act differently because you know it. So it kind of, and this is what is really interesting. Say today it's an introduction of everything, but as we go further, we'll tell you concrete things to do, like so. And
Yeah.
it really changes the way you see your children because you respect their development. And then I look at Cheryl, but like the Cheryl, in your value, you used to respect also child's development with the ceremony of a little step. I don't know if it's the right word, but you had that, like the, en français, les petits pas.
Walking out.
Walking out, you had those, if you would like to add a little bit more on that.
Well, like the walking out ceremony is, they don't touch the ground all year until it's time to actually do that. And they're equipped with tools to go around the tree to ensure that, they have a path, they're shown a path at the little young age, according to their development. They're not expected to do, like to know everything and understand, but this is a beginning.
Yes, rituals and ceremonies are often an acknowledgement of a natural developmental phase, right? Just now they are ready to walk, and we aren't expecting them to walk before that, right? It's okay, and that's basically, I think this is one of the biggest messages that we want to give in the next little while, is that when we understand what our children are truly ready for, we will have more patience with what they're not yet ready for. Right. And so when we know that they should be ready, and again, I think developmentally, Cheryl, if you looked at it from your other hat, your child development hat, you know that the body is ready to start walking around 12 months old. It's perfectly natural. And so people who didn't know neuroscience or developmental science saw that and respected it and honored it and didn't push the children to go faster than they were ready to go. And I think that's the big message, is let's not push our children to go faster than they're ready to go. Let's honor where they are and then give them, as you say, the tools to take that next step.
Eva, just to make a comment there, but everything that you just said there earlier, when you have a child, it's not like you know what to do right away. Part of the teaching comes from the child. You're not teaching the child, but the child teaches you. You are doing both. And I think that the relationship, the bonding has to be worked upon. So, like I had a baby, and I remember feeling this, with my first child, like I have a baby, and when you talk about breastfeeding, like how do you breastfeed? Like, how do I know, the child's getting nourishment? Like there was a bunch of questions there that I had, and it took like me to a perseverance to keep at it and to build that relationship so that it would get stronger. And it got stronger the more time that I spent with that baby. And like you said, they're your sunshine, but you're their sunshine, and you're building a relationship. And this is so important. I just love what you're saying, Eva. Keep on going.
Thank you. All right. Well, now we're going to get into behavior. And again, I love this little girl.
Yeah, and then again, Eva, sometimes is it a myth or reality that behavior are done on purpose to manipulate parents? Because this is what we hear quite often.
Oh yeah, they're just doing it to manipulate you. And yes, in some ways they are, but it's a communication. A child is trying to tell us something. Now, I don't exactly know what this little girl is trying to tell somebody, but depending on the context, she's either trying to make us laugh, and when we laugh, that's sunshine, right? So she says, okay, can I get the adults to smile at me? So her behavior is basically saying, I need you to smile at me. Now, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not an inappropriate behavior, but it might well be that when you ask her to do something, now she starts to get silly and makes that face. And you say, oh, come on, don't be so silly. But maybe she's making the silly face because she thinks what you're asking her is too hard. She might not get it right, and you might get upset with her. So now she's trying to avoid you getting upset with her. But it's not like she's thought it through, and of course, if she did logically think it through, oh my goodness, if I don't do what my mommy tells me to do and I make that face, she's going to get even angrier. No, basically her brain says, let's get mommy to laugh, or let's get mommy to forget what she asked me, right? So behavior is a communication. It's the brain's way of letting others know what is going on in our emotional world. And that's going to be our job. And Cheryl, you were saying even just about feeding your own baby. Your baby kept telling you what was working, what wasn't working, right? And you had to read that. And then you had to figure out what else to do. And of course, with a brand newborn baby, you're not going to get upset with the baby because the baby isn't, you're going to say, oh, what's my baby trying to tell me? And we need to keep doing that as our children get older. What is my child trying to tell me underneath? Because it's usually spontaneous, it's natural, and it's not really learned. Some things you can learn, but there's so much of our behavior that is very natural. And so when a child is constantly whining, and people say, oh, he's just trying to get attention. Well, attention means I want a connection with somebody. Now, can we help them find another way to do it? Absolutely. But sometimes we have to say, let me give the child what that child is needing first before I get them to change it a bit. So they do try and get us to change our behavior because they're not sophisticated enough yet to tell us in a way that would be easy for us to understand. So we have to become the person who responds. And as you say, Cheryl, when you persisted, then you got there, then things got better. So as a parent, if I saw a child making this face when I asked him to do certain things, I, oh, that's hard for you to do. Let me help you. Let's start. Let me show you where to start. So behavior is a communication. And one of the two last things we want to say here before we open it to questions is the importance of play. People are now studying play. There are whole schools and universities that are studying play. What we know about play is, first of all, it's essential for our emotional well-being. Children are playing less and less. And by the way, we're not talking video games. We're talking more the kind of thing this child is doing here. The less children have time for play, the more mental health problems go up. It's essential for emotional well-being. It is essential for brain development. This little boy's brain is learning all sorts of things about how to balance. It's really, really important. And it's also essential for developing life skills when children play together, when they figure out what goes wrong, what doesn't go wrong, what they can do differently. So one of the things we need to remember is to honor, again, to respect when children are playing, and especially if they're doing imaginative play, or even if they're doing, other kinds of emotional play, and we'll talk about that. And then the last thing that I want to say is that it is very, very, very important for us to have a village of attachment. And by that, we mean all of those people whom we trust to help us to raise our children, and also all of those who support us so we can be there for our children. I'm just dealing with a situation right now where I'm quite far away from these people, and the children are having some problems, and the mother is turning to me. I can't be her. She has to be the mother to her children, but I can support her. So she calls me up, and sometimes she cries for 15 minutes and she rants for 15 minutes. And my job is to listen to her and then to give her a little bit of advice to help her to go back and be the mother that she needs to be. So we need people that can help us with the day-to-day work, but we also need people who support us.
And Cheryl, do you have anything to add on village of attachment, since you're from Easy?
Well, for me, like my family was a great supporter in raising my children. Like my father, oh, God bless his soul there. He was not, he was more of a, let's say, residential school person. So being, having had that kind of parenting, it was very difficult for him to show those emotions. So I think that having the grandchildren, like you said, Eva, you get that second chance. So he had he loved my girls, girls. So when the girls were born, they can ask him anything, like, Grandpa, bring me to the store to buy a popsicle. And he would never do that for me, but he's running for his grandkids.
Yeah.
And like, they make a cookie, and they brought him a big gigantic cookie, and they were like, Grandpa, I made a cookie for you. And he was not, like, he had a hard time, I would say, like, it was hard to see them love him and hug him. And finally at the, the end of his days, like, he'd come to daycare and he'd pucker his lips.
Oh.
The girls would come and kiss him.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how the relationship changes, your relationship with your grandchildren changes you. And this is what I'm saying. Children teach you. You're not only the alpha in that relationship, but they have a lot to show you. And one of the things that I want to say is that when you're a parent for life. Those children come back, even if they're coming back.
Yeah.
They say, how does it feel not to have your children at home? Well, it doesn't, you're always concerned about them no matter what.
Yeah.
And having a baby is one of the most unselfish things that you can do, because you're responsible for a little beautiful human being there. And it's your job to take care of them.
And the thing about it is that we can't do it alone. We need people around us. We definitely need people around us. So I'm just going to just leave you with a few things to remember, and hope that just pick one of them. Hopefully it will inspire you in the next few weeks till our next session. Think of behavior as communication. What's my child trying to tell me? Remember that emotions are important, even if they are messy. Value play. Rejoice if your child is playing and creatively playing. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. To focus on the relationship. Remember to try and get your eyes to light up. Be ready to restore and repair, and create that garden of safety. And just reassure the child we're going to try again. That's all they want to know. Not are you the perfect parent, but are we okay? Can we try again? And that's our job, to let them know that. And lean on your village of attachment for support. And then trust also that you can be a good enough to be the adult that your children need. You don't have to be perfect. So we do have our the Facebook page here. Val, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Eva. Thank you, Cheryl. That was really great to hear. We do have our Facebook page that you can reach. It's a private group. You will find, as I was saying previously, you will find the link to the recording. And also you can find my email address, and as well as my colleague's email address. So if you have any question, then you can write to us. And also we'll have a TikTok that will be growing shortly, but that will, what we would really like to do, as Eva was saying, it is, and Cheryl, it is important to have a village of support. So if we can feed you, with some great information, also as resources that we choose really that makes sense, that everything that we will publish, everything that we'll talk about is really to make sure that we, first of all, respect children's development, and also make sure that reinforce our relationship, and then feel that we're not alone. So this is the 3 key that we respect when we do something in growing together.